Welcome everyone. Today's video is gonna blow your mind. This video is for the League of Legends lovers in capital letters. If you like to get specific, this video is gonna be perfect for you. We're gonna be talking strategy. We're gonna be talking formations. We're gonna be talking positions and positional advantages. We're gonna get really specific. And to show all of these concepts, I took the Genji versus HLE Game 5 from the Korean playoffs to Worlds, because this is, I think, the highest level macro that we've seen this year. And there's a lot of good examples of the concepts that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in this video. And if you guys want to get coached by me, link's going to be in the description. You clicked on this video because of the banana that we had on the thumbnail. What does that have to do with anything that we're going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to start off with formations. And formations, what does that mean? Well, that's multiple people coming together and standing in a specific spot, which then leads to a formation. You got different kinds of formations. You got ball formations, you got spread out formations, you got banana formations. And today is going to mainly be focused on this particular banana formation. And it's going to be mainly in direction towards team fights and towards area control. Because a lot of League of Legends is played around objectives and about retaking area control and about getting yourself in a position where you can deal out damage while the enemies cannot really damage you. Hence the banana formation. And right here, we see it in a beautiful example. You can also call it a different way. You can also call it the concave arc. I just like to call it the banana formation because it sounds funny and you know exactly what we're looking for. If you look at these teams, how are they positioning? They're positioning in a little bit of an arc like this. And you see that the enemy team, the Genji in this case, is also positioning in a little bit of an arc like this. Now you gotta be wondering, okay, why do these players position themselves in such a way? Well, there's a very specific reason why they do that. The reason is that everyone's heard of front to back. Everyone has heard of front to back team fighting, the classic front to back. Well, this is the optimized version of a front to back. Why? Because you got yourself the sides, of which that you usually run the little bit more bruisery, tanky champions, usually with engage as well, and mobility, that also then provide the space for the carries, in this case, to sit back and get into a position that they can start hitting the enemies or get into a position where they're safe without being in a position where they're vulnerable to getting engaged on by the enemies. So this is a trend that you're going to be seeing throughout the entirety of this long clip that I'm going to be showing you in this example. You see that people are going to be moving inside this banana formation. So why is it so important that that people move in this formation? Well, it all has to do with the amount of damage that you can deal in this particular formation. Why is that? Well, I want you to visualize, right? What happens if any one of Genji right now engages upon Viper? Well, if anyone engages upon Viper, what's going to happen is that everyone's going to close in, and you're going to get into this position where this champion that gets engaged is completely getting nuked by the other guys around them because of how they're positioning. And therefore, this formation is incredibly strong, because if you put yourself in a position like this, there's not really an engage possible on any of these particular champions because of how much follow-up there is from HLE's side to get onto any of the potential engages from Genji. Now, if you look at this from like a damage perspective, right? If there was no AoE in League of Legends, everyone would literally be standing upon the same place. Like everyone would be hugging each other, and that would mean that if someone comes into a fight, everyone can start hitting. But there's AoE in the game, and therefore what actually happens is that we need to spread out, but we need to spread out in such a way that we can always instantly follow up if there's an engage happening. So that's the idea behind this this concave arc, the banana formation. And the reason why it's so good is because it's really strong in one direction. And this is why this strategy is used so often, is because this particular arc is really strong in this direction. You got your strong carries on the back, you got yourself the tanky, engagey, bruisery, flanky, mobility-esque champs on the side. And what this then leads to do is that it's really hard for Genji in this case to engage upon HLE, and it puts HLE just in a very strong positional advantage, because whatever happens, HLE is going to be able to deal more damage to Genji than the other way around, which leads to HLE, of course, coming out ahead. And a few things to keep in mind while we're going to be playing out in setup for the next dragon, because this is where everything is going to be happening, is that this is really strong in one direction, and you really want to bend it towards where the threat is coming from. You see it right here as well. Look at how these two teams are moving right here. You see, this arc is constantly into place. And of course, sometimes Peanut Zeka or Delight Zeka, everyone can swap it up. Ziggs is mainly positioned in like one specific spot because of how his champion works. He cannot really be on the side of the arc. And you also see that for Genji's side, there's also a very clear way of how they're retaking and coming back into this position is by once again keeping this arc alive. And this is how you're going to be seeing this entire sequence play out all the time. You're going to see constantly these arcs with people, with the tanky guys on the side, and it's just beautiful to see. So the goal is to constantly draw this arc towards where the enemies are coming from. So in this case, you see that this Genji got this beautiful arc into this position, and that puts them in this position right here where they're very strong to cater towards this position, because it's really hard for HLE to get through this choke point because they're not in the arc, right? There's a lot of AoE on Genji's line as well. You got the Nautilus ult, you got the Canyon ult, you got the Chovy bombs and ults. It's really hard for HLE to access through here. And the reason why Genji is allowed to be here in this particular spot in general is because of the fact that Vi or Rel cannot brute force onto any of these champions right here, because if Vi or Rel, this is the perfect example right here, try to flash R onto Chovy right here, what's going to happen is that Vi and Rel are going to get onto there. What's going to happen to Viper in the meantime, right? Who's going to defend Viper from the Skarner, the Kaisa, the Nautilus, the Cassante, who can also peel Chovy right here. So it's a very strong formation in this particular case. So what you see is that because of the formational advantage from Genji, HLE now cannot enter through this choke. So what you see Doran do, Doran actually goes towards the side right here and creates his own arc, therefore putting threat onto the sides of Genji, and Chovy in this case is a little bit out of position. And the tricky thing about these dragon fights is that there's so little space, so it's so hard to make these arcs, and it forces Chovy to W out. He's now going to reposition with his team, and look how HLE retakes this particular area control. You see that Peanut is going to the side. Why do they go to the side? Well, if you can increase your arc, you're going to get access towards the sides of the enemy arc. But you cannot, of course, increase your arc too much, because it's going to put you in a position where your team then gets really, really vulnerable. So you always got to be in engaging or like explosion range, so to say. So we've now talked about the arcs right here. We now know how the arcs work, and that basically it's all about creating space for your carries to deal damage. That's the idea of these arcs. So you're going to see Keen, especially, he's going to sacrifice a lot of HP. He's going to sacrifice a lot of space, a lot of his health bar to create space for his team so that they can actually walk in and damage. And what we're also going to be seeing right here is that these particular formations are usually really weak from the side. Why? If you got a Jax right here on this spot, what's going to happen is that this Jax is going to be able to get access instantly to either Pace or Chovy, and then you're in a lot of trouble. From behind, it's also incredibly weak, because this is where your squishy strong members, high damage dealers are, which means that you gotta always be careful from that spot as well. So from behind and from the flanks, it's very, very dangerous. Of course, like a full-on behind flank is usually not what a team can go for, because if someone's isolated right here, all 5 members are going to be brute forcing onto them. So you'll very rarely see pincer movements in League of Legends, in the sense that they're coming from one particular side. So To continue right here, right? You see now that Genji is now repositioning, and Doran is also repositioning because Doran recognizes, hey, I want to be on the side right here because I've got easiest access towards the enemy carries. And you see that Keen is walking forward, trying to create space for his team. And you also see that in this case, when it comes to the arcs that we're creating right here, this one's a little bit misdrawn, is that you sometimes also can go over walls. As long as you understand, it's fine to go over walls, as long as you have access towards the fight if the enemy team decides to hard engage. So we see a beautiful dance right here. And this dance eventually just keeps on going because there's always this position that the teams are trying to get. In this case, Doran jumps over the fight because Genji got a little bit more up. So if he stays over this wall, it's going to be really hard for him to access this fight if Lance decides to, for example, hard engage upon HLE. So Doran needs to get closer. He uses the blast cone to get a little bit more in position, but still he keeps his flank of this arc up. If he walks forward, it's going to grant Zeka and Viper a little bit more space to walk forward as well. Of course, he's vulnerable to getting engaged upon, so you can you always got to do it in motion in such a way. So what you're going to now see is we're going to talk a little bit more towards the arcs, right? Because the goal that you want to understand is what these players are trying to do is they're trying to create a slightly larger arc than the enemy. Because if your arc is slightly larger than the enemy's, what you'll actually see is that you're going to get access towards the potential flanks, right? And what we just talked about is that these flanks are what's really vulnerable towards these positions. So if you can get onto this player on this player, it's going to be really hard for those players to survive. You can get a Jax or a Skarner onto them, like it's devastating, or like Cassante, it's completely devastating. So usually a team with a slightly larger arc wins because you got slightly more area control. But you cannot make the arc too long because then it's going to completely lose you pressure, and then you're actually vulnerable to getting engaged upon and brute force through the middle. So it's really important that you get access towards the enemy's ends of the arc because those are potential engage tools, especially if there's mispositionings. So that's why usually a lot of these players will actually go over the walls and to increase the length of their arc and get access towards the enemy sides of the arc. Also, if you got a slightly larger arc than the enemy, you're also usually less prone to AoE damage, which means that just in total damage numbers, the enemies are going to be dealing a little bit less damage. If a Ziggs bomb is hitting 4 people, right, we know that it's going to be absolutely devastating for a team fight because of the amount of damage that it is. But if everyone's split up, it's not going to really be possible for them to do that. So continuing to a little bit of positional advantages, right? Because I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing the creme de la creme of strategy in positional advantages. Look at Pace. Pace is not standing in the arc. Why? Because Kaisa is a very unique champion. Kaisa is a champion that can stand a little bit further back and access the fight whenever she wants, mainly due to her R, right? She can do whatever she wants as long as there's a little bit of CC, which Genji has more than enough of. And therefore, Kaisa can usually stand a little bit further outside of the arc, but she does a very unique, specific thing in her own place. And what she does is she actually uses terrain. The way she stands right here is this is like the Genji coaches and strategy staff is they've studied this shit, right? Is she puts herself in a position where Kaisa can start nuking people with Ws. Why is this such a strong position right here in the back? Well, number one, she's in fog. She's in fog of war, and that means that no one's going to see her shoot her Ws, and therefore they're not able to anticipate it. Therefore, she's going to be they have to react to it, which is harder than anticipating. Number two is I want you to look at how this exact position looks if you look at the terrain coming up here. This lines up perfectly with this angle right here. And this is a big angle because this is a very important spot for HLE eventually to get the arc going. This spot is really, really important, this line. And it lines up perfectly with the choke point and with the wall right here. So this is a crucial position for Kaisa, in which that she can just start nuking Ws down that path. And if the HLE is trying to contest this this dragon, they need to be in this arc right here. Otherwise, they're vulnerable to AoE once again. And that's going to mean that they're going to get guaranteed hit by Kaisa W's. If you're going to take a look at how Kaisa is going to be throwing these W's, there's almost very little that she's actually going to be missing because of how good her understanding of this is. So what we're going to see right here is that she's going to wait for... this arc's going to break a lot, right? Because no one's really going to get in a position where they're going to get a perfect situation to fight. And you see that HLE is continuously trying to increase the length of this arc right here. Kaisa's quickly getting the wave, being efficient. She can always jump in anyway. HLE is trying to get access towards this dragon again because Genji is putting this dragon a little bit out and towards their line. And as you can see that none of the teams are actually surpassing this line right here because this is where you cannot really form this arc. At least you can do it over the wall, but it's really hard to be in that position because you're so cramped up. So right now, right, you see that Pace from this point is going to start gunning down his W clearly across this line, and every single one is going to hit. You're just going to see it right here. It's undodgeable because HLE cannot get out of that line. They need to keep that position, otherwise, you see what Keen does. Like this, it's so beautiful once you start seeing it. I get so fucking excited when when I see this, by the way. So what Keen does right here, there's so much stuff going on, it's insane. What Keen does right here is he's now increasing the arc, right? So Keen stood right here, then Genji cannot walk in. So Keen is moving to the side to up. Instead of him, what you see a lot of tank players do. If you're a tank player, by the way, you're watching this is important. What you see a lot of tank players do is they actually walk in through here. Right, they're walking through here instantly, but that's not going to give any space towards the rest of your team to walk in as well. So what Keen does is he actually walks up. Because if he walks up, that's going to get space for the rest of his team. Right, it's going to get space for the rest of his team to walk in besides him because he is away from the action right here. And if he would be right here, he's instantly going to get engaged upon because there's 5 people hitting him. But right here, that's not really the case. So he's increasing the arc right here, which is going to give Genji more access towards this fight. And it's absolutely gorgeous because you see that now Chovy is able to walk in and get access towards the dragon. Lehans is able to walk in, and that's all because Keen is creating this space. This is literally a Keen masterclass right here. And of course with Kane on the side as well to finish it off, right? So you see that right now, instantly, you see that HLE is going to try to regain this space by once again going over the walls and increasing their arc. Because what you're going to get, right, if you're really going to be drawing this out, is you get, this is the arc from HLE. I want to do this in yellow. This is the arc from HLE. And this is the arc from Genji. This is the arc from Genji right here. You're going to get in a position right here where this pointing end of the arc right here it's a very unique point because you're really vulnerable to engage. But if the enemies engage onto you, there's also the rest of your team, in this case, that can instantly follow up on you because they're joining in on the arc. What you see is that usually these arcs are kind of situated like this, right? In which that one end of the arc is right here and the other end of the arc is right here. And this is a pretty neutral position because both teams have tread onto a specific part of the position of the enemy team. So to continue, what's HLE gonna do right now? They're gonna spread out. Look what Jax does. Jax instantly finds the flank right here, and HLE now decides to commit right here. So Yone is able to stack his Q3 up. You see that Pace is, in this case, also spreading out. And you see that Genji's now in a position where they're getting a little bit screwed because you see how close these guys are all to each other, right? This is going to be really, really good stuff for HLE. They're all getting very close to each other. And that means that they're very vulnerable to AoE. Plus the Jax is now on the flank. You can see that the arc actually kind of runs through right here. What did Genji just do? They now inverse their arc. And that makes actually the sides right here even more vulnerable. So let's see what's going to happen right now. Is that Jax actually spots the angle and gets himself a beautiful turn onto Chovy, and this puts Gen G in a position where they're getting absolutely wiped in this team fight. They're getting completely wiped. The problem was Gen G was forced to walk in right here because it's Dragon Soul for HLE. So with HLE being in this position with the dragon on this amount of HP, it's really favorable for them because they got Yone right here. They're not too cramped up right here. And in this case, none of Gen G is on this side to threaten HLE. At least Base is not really able to do that all that well because he's not really able to someone that can go in. So Gen G is not that, HLE is not that threatened. And therefore, Doran has a really easy time also engaging upon Gen G right here. And they're forced to stand there, right? They're forced to be in that positional tough spot because of the dragon dropping low. And if HLE gets that soul, of course, we all know what's going to happen towards the game. They're going to get out stat check Gen G, and they're going to, of course, win. So this is the first fight that I want to show. Now, we're also going to go towards the next fight right here, which is going to be on the soul point again, because Canyon was able to sneak up the Dragon Soul. And we're going to be in a very similar position. Once again, this dance is going to happen right here. And Gen G instantly learns from last time because their position is really weak to flanks. So right now we got ourselves in a position, hey, how do we deal with these type of flanks right here? And that's you send a man to get that guy out. And in this case, entire Gen G's comps get countered by Jax. So Jax is a mega pick right here. So they're forced to send Chovy there, which is not ideal because Chovy needs backup because he cannot 1v1 the Jax. And that puts them in a position where Gen G's practically like in a really tough spot already. But what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to bump this Doran off. They're going to try to make it hard for him to enter, get him out. And then they're going to try to hard engage when Doran's out of position. That's what they're going to try to do. When Doran is too far away to instantly join the fight. And Chovy's job is to keep Doran out right here. And as you can see, that Chovy does not beat Doran, so he needs to W defensively if Doran just only presses E. And you see that the dance in this case, right, continues. A little bit of the arc. HLE is really cramped up because that's kind of what this Dragon Pit forces you to do. You're forced to be cramped up. And Kayan is now looking from the other side, putting threat onto the enemy. So Gen G instantly makes a massive adaptation with this particular fight. And you also see Keen walking in. He does not walk in towards the enemies. No, he walks in towards this position right here to grant himself a little bit more of this arc once again and a little bit more space to work with because he cannot face plant himself into the enemy team. But by Keen standing here, it's going to grab Gen G a little bit more space to work with. Also the Nautilus, who is very vulnerable and very squishy at this point. And what you see is that, okay, Gen G recognizes, all right, Doran's out of position. Doran's out of position right now. They spot him on the ward. Gen G Lehans sees the angle onto Peanut, instantly collapses. And what happens is that this was, upon 0.5 seconds, a winning fight for Gen G. But what happens is that Peanut absolutely smurfs it. And Canyon is 0.5 seconds too late with this Skarner E. So I really want you guys to look what happens with this Skarner E. Okay, so Nautilus engages, ults, chain CCs the Vi. If Canyon is onto the Vi right here, right now, and he CCs her, they win this fight. But Peanut gets a flash R off, bumps away Canyon, right, from this engage. And that basically allows HLE to win this fight. But because of that, Gen G Lehans actually gets killed as well. So it's completely mental, the milliseconds and the specifics that go on. Because what happens, right, is that if Canyon gets this stun off onto Vi and does not get cancelled, he can just R the Yone plus Vi, which means that Lehans survives the counter engage from Zeka right here with the Q3. And the entire team fight looks different. You see the beauty of the specifics here in this particular game. So lot of things to unpack in these particular games. Like it goes really deep. There's a few things I want to still mention. like if you want to play with the banana formation, right, and you want to play in an arc like that, you have to have multi-threat. You cannot do that with one threatening champ. If you have 4 tanks plus a Kog'Maw, it's not really the ideal way to go about it, because there's only one player really damaging. So what's going to happen is that you're not utilizing the threat of multiple damaging sources towards someone engaging upon you. So it doesn't really work with that type of comp. And you can also do like some variations with flank champions. So in this case, what you see in these examples is if Jax is on the side, you see that the rest of them is still are still going to be in a little bit of an arc, while only one of them is going to be on the side. But once again, it cannot be on the opposite side. It's always towards the side of the fights, because on the opposite side, you sometimes do not have the potential to enter, or you're going to get turned upon. So that's why you got to be on the side of these fights. I think that's most of it of what I actually wanted to cover today. I talked a lot. I discussed a lot of really, really cool concepts in this video. In this video also, I got some help with making it from Rico. I really want to shout out Rico as well. Thanks for helping me out with the content of this video. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to bring it down in the comments. I'm happy to take a look at them and answer you guys. And otherwise, we'll be back real soon with another video. Thank you all for watching, guys.